Sup guys, Chris, right back at you. Here to talk about, obviously if you read the title, Juan Manuel Marquez versus Floyd Mayweather Jr. going head to head on pay-per-view against UFC 103. Thought this was an interesting little subject to broach. I read about it somewhere else too, but I had my thoughts on it even before then. So these are both taking place on September 19th. This is the first time I can recall, at least in a long time, that a major boxing pay-per-view is going head to head with the UFC pay-per-view. The question is, which one are you going to see? Which one do I think is the better buy? Which one do I think is more worth the money? Personally, before I even say anything else, I'm going to buy UFC 103. I've said before on my other videos, I never buy boxing pay-per-views. Normally, they're just not worth the money, in my opinion. You get the main event, and the undercard sucks. But the difference here is the undercard's pretty damn good, to be honest. But another thing is, when I watch UFC, I watch with a group of people so I can go in and split the cost. With boxing, it'd pretty much just be me, footing the bill. Also, in a lot of these pay-per-view fights, plus including Mayweather Marquez, I can watch it a week later on HBO for free, so I got to take that into factor. I can't watch UFC for free a week later. So, anyways, I believe that the Mayweather Marquez fight will be $55, on standard, not high def. That'll probably cost more. But in UFC's $45. We don't get it. We don't pay for it on high def. I don't think it makes that much of a difference. That I need to put out the extra money. But anyways, as far as the main events, I definitely think the boxing card has the advantage here. Mayweather Marquez. Whether I think it's kind of I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna say it's a one-sided fight at all. But I do think that Mayweather has the advantage in this fight. Has many advantages in this fight. But either way, you got two of the top, possibly three, if not top, at least top 5 pound-for-pound fighters in the game, going head to head. Whereas in UFC 103, you got Vitor Belfort against Rich Franklin is the main event. That's a good fight. Those are both high-level guys. But definitely not top pound for pound. Not like Mayweather and Marquez are in boxing. So definitely say Mayweather Marquez has the advantage in that fight itself. The main event. Interesting thing is both those fights might be. I don't know what's going on with Mayweather Marquez the weight. I don't think anybody still does. But if it's a catchweight, both main events are at a catchweight, so that's kind of interesting. Anyways, co-main event of Mayweather Marquez, Chris John versus Rocky Juarez. The first fight was good. I thought Chris John won that fight, but it was a close fight. So this rematch should be a pretty good fight. It depends. I thought it was a good fight, but not like a really exciting fight. But it was entertaining. So I expect the rematch to be the same. Also, you got Vicente Escobedo against Michael Katsidis. That should be a fun fight to watch. Both guys, they're not the top level, echelon boxers, but they are skilled. They do like to, they're more so guys that win on a work rate, power. They don't win just by being a technically sharp boxer and whatnot, or just speed demons or anything. But their styles should mesh really well together. I don't know who I think is going to win that fight yet. Probably give the advantage to Escobedo, maybe. But either way, it should make for an exciting fight. That should be a really good, entertaining television fight. And then you got Zab Judah versus Antonio Diaz. This is an interesting fight. This fight would have been a lot better if it would have happened, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Unfortunately, Diaz, I don't think he really has much left. He was a good fighter. Then he retired for a while, and now he's making a comeback. But he's just not the fighter that he once was. And I think stylistically, it's a perfect opponent for Zab to look good in. I think Zab's speed and reflexes and just punching power and everything, he's just got the advantage pretty much everywhere except for possibly chin. But I think Zab's going to make easy work of Antonio Diaz. But it should be an entertaining fight to watch while it lasts. If Zab shows flashes of what he has, then it should make for, even if it's one-sided, it should be an entertaining one-sided fight. Similar to like Roy Jones, some of his fights were, they were completely one-sided, but he just looks so good in there against the opponent that it's almost entertaining in a way, although other people may disagree with that. As for the UFC, the other cards on the undercard, or whatever, you got Mirko Cro Cop against Junior Dos Santos. Now, Cro Cop used to be one of the better heavyweights in the world, but he's been on a slide of late. He did win his last fight, but it was kind of a strange stoppage because he had poked the guy in the eye before he ended up finishing with strikes. Dos Santos is kind of newer to, he doesn't have a big resume like Cro Cop, but he does have a couple good wins recently. That's a pretty good fight. Hopefully it'll remain standing. If so, it should be exciting. So it's kind of like with John Juarez, it could be a really good fight, but it could also just be so-so. We'll see. The next fight up is Martin Kampman versus Mike Swick. Now this is similar to Escobedo Katsitas. I mean, although I think these guys are a little more, maybe a little bit higher level to MMA than what Escobedo and Katsitas are in boxing, but just slightly. No disrespect to Katsitas or Escobedo. But this should be a really good fight, much as Escobedo Katsitas. This should be an exciting fight. Style-wise, both guys prefer to stand, but both guys can work on the ground. I believe it's for a title shot, so that's at stakes, so both guys are going to obviously want to train hard and, should want to really win this fight. I just think stylistically that's a really good fight and it should make for an entertaining fight. Next up, we got Josh Koscheck versus Frank Trigg. This is a fight of two wrestlers, but usually when two wrestlers fight, they end up standing and trading. They may not have the best technique, especially compared to boxing, but it makes for entertaining fights, if nothing else, Although I think Koscheck has the wrestling to put Trigg on his back and, kind of work him over there, but we'll see. Anyways, and also on the undercard, opening bout, you got Tyson Griffin versus Hermes Franca. It should be an alright bout. I think Griffin will pretty much dominate, put Hermes on his back and dominate him from there. Franca is good jiu-jitsu, but he's not going to catch Griffin. But anyways, I'm not really going to break down the card too much. I mean, I seem to be getting into that. That's not what this video is about. Apologies for that. But overall, which do I think is worth more worth the money? You do get one more fight for the MMA card, and it is cheaper. You do got some good fights on there, but the boxing card, you got some really good fights on it. I mean, they're all pretty good, evenly matched, except for Judah Diaz. But like I said, that fight should be entertaining nonetheless. You can never predict if a fight's really going to end up being good or not, Particularly with MMA, sometimes I really think a fight's going to be good and it ends up being a snooze fest. So it depends. I'd probably honestly think that I think that Mayweather Marquez is more worth the money. The thing is with Floyd, as in the De La Hoya fight, some of his fights just aren't that exciting, even if he wins. So Mayweather Marquez may not be the most exciting fight, so it depends, Obviously, I think boxing fans, hardcore boxing fans are going to get the boxing card, and hardcore MMA fans are going to get the MMA card. People that are fans of both, like myself, I don't know, I think you may be more inclined to buy the Mayweather card. I do think the Mayweather card is going to do a lot better on pay-per-view. Mayweather is a big draw. They do have the promotion of 24/7 helping them sell the fight, which is huge. I do think that helps bring in buyers to the pay-per-view and whatnot. So, if UFC 103 had a bigger name headlining, like a Brock Lesnar, for example, or a Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, something like that, maybe it might be a closer, but it doesn't really make a difference in the end. Although whoever does get more buys, they're going to be taunting, talking, boxing's better than MMA and this is why, or MMA, boxing's dead because we sold more pay-per-views and whatnot. That's not really the case. Both got solid fan bases in my opinion. And I'm a fan of both, but be sure that whichever one sells more, that sport's going to be trying to throw in the other fans of the other sports' faces. I don't really care because I'm a fan of both, But anyways, like I said, I'm going to order UFC 103. I will watch Mayweather Marquez the following weekend, and hopefully I won't regret my purchase. I doubt I will, in all honesty, because I'm only going to put in like $15-20, because I split it with so many people and whatnot. But anyways, I kind of want to hear what your guys' thoughts, Like I said, I'm sure you boxing fans are going to go for the boxing side, MMA fans likewise, but people that are fans of both, what do you think is the better card? Which one would you want to purchase, or which one do you think is more worth the money? That's pretty much it for now, guys. It'll be interesting to see what happens come September 19th, but until my next video, which will probably be tomorrow, I'm out.